I recently published my BYLER Part 2 video on the romantic possibility between Mike and Will in Stranger Things, and because I presumed the BYLER audience, it was a bit spicier than Part 1. Someone commented, "I'm glad you're letting out all your saltiness in this vid," to which I responded, "Oh, you don't know the other section I didn't have time to include then." Today's video is that excluded section, which I didn't have time for, that video was already long enough. Today's where I don't give a fuck. I think one of the most convincing things one can do to show that BYLER is likely is to compare the quality of the arguments on both sides. I don't exaggerate when I say that I think the most convincing presentation of why Mileven, Mike, and Elle should be endgame is what I say near the start of my BYLER Part 1 video. Today I'll do a survey of arguments for Mileven or against BYLER, rebut them, and then end with some amazing comments for BYLER that I've seen. And I think by the end you'll agree with me that the quality of arguments is night and day. Now note, even some BYLER fans wonder, among ourselves, how BYLER could be pulled off. That for viewers, it might come out of nowhere for Mike to be with or want to be with Elle for 4 seasons to suddenly be gay and date Will. First, my first 2 videos show that it would not come out of nowhere, and if Will were a girl, everyone would be thinking BYLER would be inevitable. But there is a valid concern, how to actually make the audience see and cheer for a gay romance that's been waiting in the wings. Well, that's another video idea that I don't know I'll have time to do. In the meantime, you can refer to a Tumblr post I made on this very question, link in the description. First, to introduce myself, I'm Ronald Off the Record, a lawyer with the civil rights group BAM, By Any Means Necessary, who makes videos about entertainment I enjoy. I seek to bring analysis and heart to the conversation. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I'll be posting shorter edits of my reactions to Season 5 as Stranger Things comes out, where I'll either squeal like schoolgirl because BYLER's happening, or be gravely disappointed. You can see complete reactions on my Patreon, which you should all support, by the way. I'm truly a volunteer lawyer, where you'll also get early access to my edits, which will be on my public channel weekly, but you'll get earlier access on my Patreon. First, I want to be clear. There are many respectful Milevens out there who aren't that bothered that an alternate ship might become canon. And I'll say that most are respectful, but this is the internet. It attracts the most invested people, and the most vociferous people, loudest people, tend to dominate. So it's necessary to have a video that rebuts them. And some of them are so daft that they have their own entertainment value, in my opinion, and it's necessary to treat them with the contempt and disdain that they deserve. I want to open by showing this post by a Mileven fan that was posted on the BYLER subreddit titled, "I, Mileven Diehard, have started to ship BYLER mostly out of spite." They write, "I won't deny that I have loved Mileven as a pairing since Season 1, and still do. And I also won't deny that, while they are definitely a flawed couple, many arguments from the anti-Mileven crowd seem a bit exaggerated to me. Now, I've always liked the idea of Will and Mike getting together in, like, an alternative universe, and I've always wanted my boy Will to be happy. But whenever Mike and Elle have a cute moment together, I find that I just cannot get myself to root against them, no matter how such a small part of me wants to embrace BYLER's supremacy. So for a long time, I thought it was clear. I'm a Mileven shipper and a casual BYLER enjoyer. So what caused the scales to tip the other way? Well, ever since large parts of the fandom seem to have realized BYLER is a possibility, though they'd never admit that out loud, they've shown themselves to be the most flagrantly hypocritical, willfully obtuse, militantly aggressive, unthinkingly oblivious, offensively vitriolic, consciously or subconsciously bigoted expletives. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys this, of course. You know how bad the denialism, double standards, and thinly veiled homophobia can get. And good lord, I want Mike and Mileven to be together, but what I want even more is to witness the absolute meltdown that a BYLER endgame would cause within the fandom. I'm not usually a vindictive person, but boy, do some of these people need to eat some humble pie. Fuck. Now, obviously, I can't say I'll be really disappointed if Mileven becomes endgame, but I'll definitely be rooting for the other team anyway, like when your favorite sports team faces an underdog that you secretly kind of want to see winning. Go get your man, Will. BYLER forever. Never thought I'd say that. Now, I don't agree with the implication from this post that all Milevens are this way. It is the most vociferous who dominate, but it is those people's reaction that BYLERs encounter frequently online. Alright, here's my plan for this video with some timestamps. First, I'll cover nonsensical arguments against BYLER, better arguments against BYLER, and then some awesome BYLER posts. But first, I want to give some general advice to BYLERs about how to engage with, I'll call them anti-BYLERs in this video. First, if they're vociferous or vehement, you're almost certainly not going to convince them, and don't waste your time. Preserve your mental health. Who cares what this anonymous stranger thinks? If you do find yourself engaging with people, follow what I call BYLER rule of engagement number 1, which is, we don't have to convince anyone BYLER is endgame. Huh? What do you mean, Ronald? I mean that you don't have to convince anyone that it will happen before it actually happens, because we can't. The argument's actually about whether BYLER is possible. Because saying BYLER is impossible is the position that anti-BYLERs have to take. Because once you start to admit it's possible and start objectively looking at the signs, the evidence tilts heavily towards a BYLER conclusion. It's like opening a floodgate. And it's because of the weakness of their position that they feel that they have to shut down serious discussion. My years of being a left-wing political activist and a lawyer have taught me this. Whenever certain Milevens yell that we're delusional or otherwise try to shut down serious, respectful discussion, it betrays the lack of confidence they have in their ship. They're actually saying, you're delusional, and what you're saying bothers me so much. Often a very good retort to such Milevens who invade BYLER spaces and BYLER video comment sections is to say, well, if you're so certain about Mileven, then what are you doing here? And why are you arguing with me? It's a meme among BYLERs to say, the lion doesn't concern itself with BYLER doubt. We have the confidence derived from evidence and analysis and don't feel the need to have to maintain a culture of blind faith. Actual confidence means not being bothered. So let's not get caught up in arguments over which relationship will happen. Point out their actual position and force them to have to defend it, which is that there is no possibility of BYLER at all. It's a much easier debate to win, and you can tell right away from their reaction who's an utter waste of your time. Now, the position that there is no possibility of BYLER is the maintained consensus over at the main Stranger Things subreddit. I want to read this thoughtful, compassionate post over at the subreddit by someone arguing that BYLER is possible. It's titled, Because Stranger Things Did Not Say. They quote lines from the show. You shouldn't like things because people tell you you're supposed to, from Season 1. Nobody normal ever accomplished anything meaningful in this world, Season 2. Instead of dating somebody because you think it's going to make you cooler, why not date somebody you actually enjoy being around, Season 3. And the show screamed, quote, it's forced conformity. That's what's killing the kids. That's the real monster. Season 4. For people to assume a character's sexuality and use it as an argument to say there's no chance a ship is endgame, ignoring countless parallels with canon ships. Crazy Together, Lost You, hand-holding, screaming for the name, running to apologize, sleeping in the hospital, characters sacrificing their feelings, looking at lips, and more. I'm not saying BYLER is endgame. I'm just talking about how there's people who refuse to accept it as a love triangle. It became one the moment they said they'd go crazy together. If you don't think so, there's also the, I mean Max and Lucas and Dustin, they're great, it's Hawkins, it's not the same without you, quoting Mike obviously. He put Will as something more than the other boys in Max. Ultimately, it's a show for the nerds and freaks. It's a show for the, I'm not like your other friends, and I'm not like Nancy Wheeler, quoting Robin's statement to Steve in the bathroom. It's about realizing that I may be a shitty boyfriend, but turns out I'm a pretty damn good babysitter, quoting Steve, and that being platonic with a capital P with a girl can be bitchin' too. The show is about making, when you're different, sometimes you feel like a mistake people feel like she's not a mistake at all, like she's better for being different. And well, if fruit on your pizza is gnarly, you say, well, I say try before you deny. I say this with love, please don't be mean. If you can't be respectful, then you miss the meaning of the show, sad face. And this post was removed by the moderators of the subreddit. Meanwhile, they leave fan posts about Mileven up. They get to stay up, but BYLER ones don't. That is shameful behavior, and they're not fit to be moderators of a space that is supposed to be for all Stranger Things fans. Now on to the comments against BYLER, where I rebut them and give them the amount of respect they deserve. First, I'll start with some nonsense arguments and give a rating to each. I think they have some entertainment value, but I understand it'll be upsetting to some people too. But I include them because this kind of shitty behavior needs to be called out. Now, if you want to go past this section and go on to arguments that actually have some sway and see how I rebut them, go to the timestamp on the screen. Now, I'll say first of all that the internet has generally been a positive thing. We get to enjoy the likes of artists like Kent Nishimura. But it also amplifies the ignorant mob, people who, because they enjoy anonymity, are not accountable for their actions and not forced to self-reflect. This first argument, and BYLERs know what's coming, is that we're delusional. 0 stars, because this isn't an argument, and all it tries to do is shut down discussion. And as I said in BYLER Part 2, this is homophobic. With all the evidence there is, this would not be said if Will were a girl. It accuses people of mental incapacity for having gay feelings, and it's not even an attempt to interact civilly. If you see such a person in the wild, move on. It's as if we were to go into Mileven spaces and were to call it a crack ship. Fuck you. This next comment shows the lack of intelligence of some commenters. They write, "Yeah, I'm sorry you're delusional. It's Mike and Elle forever. You are so delusional. They are not together. They are never going to be together." She clearly didn't watch that first video. I answered her wrong accusation in the first 15 seconds. But look at her interaction when she gets some pushback. Someone calls her out as rude and says, "Also, you have no backup evidence." She responds, "And neither do you. That's why you made a ridiculous video?" Wow, it's as if being anti-BYLER has as a qualification jumping to conclusions or something. 1 star, at least they tried to engage even if it was stupid. Other people who saw my video went apoplectic, and there are some unhinged reactions out there. This person wishes that I have a flat tire and get diarrhea for the rest of my life and that I need to go to jail. 0 stars, obviously. If you're so confident in your ship, then why are you so worked up about it and wishing bad things on me? When I started to engage with the fandom about a fictional gay ship, I certainly didn't expect to be compared to World War II era fascist Italy or wanting to kill millions of innocent animals. -5 stars. This is unhinged behavior. And those of you who are not familiar with fandoms who are watching this video are probably aghast at what you're seeing. This next comment shows the likely political bent of some anti-BYLERs. Someone says, "Like for real, man, you're a liar trying to brainwash people like Democrats." A Trump MAGA lie and talking point. And this next person says, "I'm heterophobic." Doesn't exist. 0 stars to these fuckers. This next person says that Mileven is endgame, and that's just the truth. Finn Wolfhard, the actor who plays Mike, is not gay, and so why would BYLER be endgame? How stupid and ignorant is this? Well, I've got news for you. Actors play characters who are not themselves. And you clearly are not aware of the Finn Wolfhard gay cinematic universe, where he tends to take up roles of queer characters who crush on their friend. 0 stars. Next are some comments that are outrageously homophobic. Now, I understand some people not wanting to see these. You can go to the timestamp on the screen if you want to skip this section. 3, 2, 1. Okay, this first comment was on TikTok by somebody who, after it was revealed that the season 5 finale would play in movie theaters. This posting threatened violence against BYLER fans and had an unsettling picture that I'm not showing. And this comment on the same video talked about yelling the F slur in the theater if BYLER happens. This next ugly comment uses the F slur to describe Will and says that he should die. And after watching the first 5 minutes of season 5, I really fucking hope that people like this guy are wrong. Will needs a happy ending to piss people off. Then there's these next 2 comments where they claim that there's enough LGBT plus representation in the show, but reveal themselves to be raging homophobes. This one says, "I'm not homophobic, but it can get really annoying seeing people of the same gender kiss or date." This next person says, "You people are actually maddening. We have a gay character and a lesbian character. That still isn't good enough for you people." Black people are long familiar with this bigoted language. Now they're telling LGBT plus people that we should be happy with the back of the bus. No, tokenism is not good enough. We deserve equality. And in a show about the outcasts being heroes, we deserve the front seats. So it's interesting that I also get responses like this next comment to my first BYLER video. The video where it showed some specific homophobic comments on the screen. Those comments went beyond disliking BYLER and hated and ridiculed people who support it, which if it were a straight ship would not have been happening, and some had blatant homophobic overtones. So this person writes, "So if someone doesn't approve of a certain plotline or outcome of the show, it is a respected opinion. But if someone doesn't approve of an outcome of the show that involves 2 characters that do not need to be together, it's homophobic." My video didn't say all people who dislike Mike and Will getting together were homophobic, just those specific commenters, but somehow you brought it quickly to you. I've seen enough in my life to know that if someone is so quick to be defensive about something, then they probably are that something. Like the famous line from Hamlet, "The lady doth protest too much, methinks." Then you claim that BYLER would ruin this show about outcasts. You kind of give yourself away here. So no, not all anti-BYLERs are homophobic, just you. And whatever you claim you are, your actions provide cover for homophobes. BYLERs see many hostile comments that use these words: forced, unnecessary, it would ruin the show, disgusting, creepy, and a very popular one I see on TikTok, weird. These are homophobic dog whistles from people who don't feel they can get away with saying what they actually think. They wouldn't be saying this if Will were a girl, and not only would they not use offensive language, they would be cheering for it. I've also seen the accusation that we only like BYLER because it's gay. Well, first, it's a double standard. Straight people don't have to defend themselves for liking straight ships, ever. But I saw someone come up with a thought experiment. What if Will and Elle were to change places? Let's say Mike and Will have a date at Rinkomania together, and Mike's best friend from childhood, Elle, feels like a third wheel. I would cheer for Elle, absolutely. Imagine Will was publicly humiliated for being gay at Rinkomania and hits the bully with a skate. Then Mike avoids Will, shows no sympathy, and at dinner that night says, "They didn't look fine." Fuck you, Mike. And Will would have every right to say,
"I dump your ass."
And I would cheer for it. Let Mike be with the person he treats better, the good-hearted, selfless, unconditionally supportive, straight girl he's been best friends with since childhood, who's been trying to make Mike and Will work out, despite the fact that she's in love with Mike because she wants the best for him. So no, if you say that I only like BYLER because it's gay, it's because you only like Mileven because it's straight. And then there's the old chestnut, the obviously homophobic argument that BYLERs somehow are sexualizing minors. This just feeds into classic anti-gay stereotypes used historically against LGBT+ people. And many of you are fucking here because you ship two people who kissed when they were 12. Which is fine too, by the way. These are fictional characters after all. You just think that this is dirty because it's gay, and you're a homophobe. Negative 10,000 stars for these homophobes. Get the fuck out. This show was made against people like you, and if Season 5 pisses you off, which I think it will, then good. Next are what I like to call drive-by comments, people who didn't even watch my video, who make no effort to engage, which of course persuades no one. This person leaves a comment with a laughing emoji, and when asked, "Did you watch the video?" they say, "No, I didn't." Next person says, "I ain't watching a nearly 3-hour video." These people are like dogs shitting while taking a walk, and when confronted about it, proudly say they did not clean up after themselves. The bullheaded confidence it takes to comment on a 3-hour video titled "Lawyer's Evidence" and say there's no evidence. It says something about their quality of thought. Here's a person saying, "There is zero evidence that Mike is gay. BYLERs seem to just be straight people who had no understanding of what being queer is." To which I rebutted, "If you think I'm straight, that tells us everything we need to know about the quality of your gaydar." 0 stars. Next we have what are in rhetoric and politics called ad hominem attacks, where you attack your opponent's character or personal traits in an attempt to undermine their argument. So not dealing with the substance of the argument itself, it's a way to change the subject. A classic tactic by people who have actually given up arguing on actual points. These comments are from people who say I'm not a lawyer. The first one saying, "Because my shirt looks wrinkled." 0 stars, you're just wrong. Again, it must be a qualification to be an anti-BYLER to have the capacity to jump to conclusions. Then there's the argument that many, if not most, BYLER fans are teenage girls. Another ad hominem attack that avoids the argument, and that's just sexist. There's no stigma in our society against straight guys getting off watching 2 girls kissing or having sex. Girls and women have every right to explore their sexuality and interests without judgment. And it's sexist and anti-young people to assume that simply because young people and girls are disproportionately part of a fandom, that it's illegitimate. Which doesn't discredit BYLER at all. In fact, first of all, nearly all fandoms have a disproportionate number of young girls and women. But also here, if anything, it makes it more credible because it's not compatible with a self-insert fantasy for this particular demographic. Negative 5 stars. Ad hominem attacks add nothing to serious discourse and are offensive and exclude people. Before I move on to less insensible arguments, I need to make a general point that some anti-Bylers feel that they have to make extreme changes to the story to make Mileven happen. For example, there's a revealing proclivity toward repainting Will Byers as a selfish, man-stealing villain. Many Bylers don't hate Elle because she's clearly a hero. We cheer for her just as we do for every other good guy on the show. But some Milevens choose to hate Will because they feel threatened by him. They talk about how he's stealing Mike from Elle. What the fuck planet are you on? Will gave up on Mike. Some even call Will a homewrecker. Will built that fucking house! The only reason Mike and Elle are still together is because Will made it happen. And they go on to say that he cries all the time, that he's whiny. After everything he went through and still quietly endures without complaining, this is just homophobia. They literally are saying things that Will's abusive father would say to him. These are people just being stupid, petty, and homophobic. The show endorses making such people feel unwelcome. Get out! And we're within our rights to do the same. Toxic Milevens have to either try to end all discussion by declaring Mike as straight, or make extreme changes to the story to make Mileven endgame. They paint the show's most selfless and sympathetic character as a villain. Some even want him to die. They character assassinate Will, or sometimes call for assassinating Will to make Mileven happen. It's because they understand storytelling tropes. Will's a threat to Mileven because in stories like this, it's usually the most virtuous one, the one with the purest love who, quote-unquote, wins the love triangle. And so they have to turn Will into a villain, sometimes appealing to homophobic stereotypes. Anti-Bylers enjoy calling us delusional, but they're engaging in delusions. Byler Endgame doesn't need anyone to steal anyone from anybody, and no one needs to die. Elle and Mike just need to follow through with their choices. Elle becoming more independent, Mike deciding to become close again to Will, and Mike learning the origin of Will's painting. They need to worsen the show's characters and need extreme actions to make their ship happen, while we don't. Now let's move on to better arguments against Byler. I think many of them are quite insensible, but they warrant a rebuttal. There are 9 of them. First, Mike is straight. Mike can't say I love you because he came from a loveless family. Mike loves Elle. Mileven is the main ship, and it's been built up for 4 seasons. There's no time for Byler in the final season. Mike doesn't deserve anyone. Why can't guys be close friends without being gay? The abused girl needs a happy ending, and Byler is unrealistic and Will should learn to move on. Let's go through them one by one. Argument 1, Mike is straight. This I can excuse a bit because of heteronormativity. It's an almost universal starting point and ending point for Mileven arguments. It's like declaring you win the match before the bell rings to avoid having to deal with objective evidence. Nice try. As I said earlier, they have to open with this and try to end with this, because once you accept the possibility that Mike could be bi or gay, you can't really unsee that something might be going on between these two. They have to try to shut down discussion with saying Mike is straight because they cannot tolerate Mike's relationship to Elle and his relationship to Will competing on an objective level. Of course, there's no proof that Mike is straight. And if you think he's straight simply because he's dating a girl, then I need to hold your hand and tell you something. There's such a thing in this world as bisexuals. Also, being gay is not as accepted as being straight, which causes some people to not act on their feelings. This is called being in the closet, and more people were in the closet in the 1980s than there are now. Also, I have to say that there's some soft homophobia going on here. The fandom has always been more willing to accept that Will is gay than with Mike. And part of that is that Mike is a leader and heroic in the first 2 seasons, for sure, of Stranger Things, and those qualities are seen as traditionally masculine. For some people, Mike doesn't fit the stereotype of what a gay boy is, while Will does. Of course, queer people come in all shapes and sizes with different personalities and demeanors and character traits. I spoke in a recent video about how Will is often not seen as heroic because he is soft and does not fit toxic masculinity's idea of a hero, when he, in fact, is one of the bravest and most badass people in the show. Also, characters who fit the traditional mold of a hero can be gay or bi, and hopefully Season 5 will dispel both homophobic myths. Argument 2. Mike can't say I love you to Elle because he came from a loveless family. They point at how his family is awkward at showing affection, and his parents seem to no longer be in love. I covered this in my first BYLER video about how there is love in his family, particularly from his mom. And for Nancy, who also came from the same loveless family, that wasn't an excuse for not being able to say she loved Steve when he asked her to, and she ended up with Jonathan. Now, who did come from a loveless family? Elle takes the cake. She comes from a very loveless family where abuse and competition between siblings for Papa's approval were institutionalized. Yet Elle has no problem saying she loves Mike. Sure, maybe for a teenage boy it's awkward to express love because society teaches boys to repress emotion. But first, let's acknowledge that Mike has zero problem being vulnerable, self-aware, admitting his mistakes, and being sweet with Will. Second, maybe being a teenage boy would explain some of your discomfort saying I love you to your girlfriend, but your girlfriend has just been bullied and is pleading with you to say that you love her. And in my opinion, this is just another case of society giving excuses to guys for shitty behavior. Our society has a proclivity to idealize problematic hetero relationships and to pass off poor male behavior, being insensitive, hurting someone's feelings, being possessive, stalking, losing their mind in relation to a girl as, oh, he just really loves her. Now, I'm not saying that Mike is an abuser, but this is the logic that lets abusers and shitty boyfriends get away with their behavior. Argument 3. Mike loves Elle. Of course, anti-BYLERs point to the fact that Mike said he loved Elle at the end of Season 4. But nearly all BYLERs agree that Mike loves Elle, it's just that he's not in love with her. Mike and Elle saved each other's life and had sweet moments in Season 1. They have a deep bond. But whenever people hear the word love used between a boy and a girl, they automatically assume it's romantic, which shows the power of heteronormativity. Season 4 unravels this when it's revealed that Mike cannot say he loves her, even when, if he were in love with her, he would of course say it. In the same season, we have a big contrast between how Luke is a good boyfriend to Max, even though he's not officially her boyfriend, and Mike, who's being a quite shitty boyfriend.
Just talk to me, to your friends. We're right here. I'm right here. Okay? I'm here.
Okay, 11, you're being ridiculous. What is this?
There is such a thing as platonic love between people of the opposite sex in relationships that are lifelong and deeply rewarding. And it's a liberating idea when you think about it. Not all meaningful relationships in life must be within an isolated, traditional nuclear family. But Mike said he loves her, people say. First, judge people by their deeds, not their words. And while I'm not a woman, a good basic piece of advice to girls and women, heck anybody, is to not take a guy's words at face value. This show has already shown that words are not enough. At the start of Season 2, Nancy said she loved Steve.
I love you.
I love you too.
And we saw where that went. And Nancy said she loved him when lives were not on the line, and it wasn't based off of a lie of being given a gift that she thought was from Steve when it actually wasn't. When we look past Mike's words and look at his actual deeds in Season 4, how he treats Elle during one of the darkest times of her life reveals how much he loves her.
What did you do? What did you do? She didn't look fine. So, are we just not gonna talk about it? I care for you so much.
You never say it.
I say it. 11, you're being ridiculous. What is this?
Mike is not taking accountability and not apologizing when he should. Meanwhile, he is with Will. Some 11 fans continue to insist that he loves Elle and he just has trouble getting in touch with his feelings. But again, Elle had just been bullied and was pleading with him. And ultimately, they favor the boy's words over the girl's testimony. Elle clocked Mike for not writing love in his letters and confronted him about it. And after his confession, there's no indication to us as viewers that Elle accepts it. As I say in BYLER Part 2, Mike doesn't give an adequate explanation for his actions in Season 4. So Elle is hardly speaking to him, there's no resolution. And it's ironic, some 11 say that BYLERs hate Elle and that they are the ones who care about her. But they don't seem to take her take on Mike into account. And honestly, I'm not sure how much some fans' appreciation of the relationship goes beyond self-inserting themselves and fantasizing about being in a relationship with Mike or Finn Wolfhard. Which is fine, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but you also want to take the actual Elle into account and what she needs from a partner. And here you need to also see the flaws in how they're relating, and at least hope that in Season 5 they will address them, because, well, a healthy couple would. Argument number 4. Mileven is the main ship. It's been built up for 4 seasons. This is admittedly a fairly convincing argument. Why spend so much time building something up, only to tear it down? First of all, it's very common in straight stories for the initial couple to not be endgame. People end up dating somebody else in these stories all the time, especially if that somebody else is canonically in love with them. In the It movies, it seems like in part 1 that Beverly will get together with Bill, who she kisses. But she eventually ends up with Ben in part 2. And they, by the way, use the Cyrano trope also. Beverly thinks that a romantic poem that touches her is from Bill, when it's actually from the eventual person she ends up with, Ben.
January embers.
My heart burns there too.
It was you.
That was built up also, and you cannot deny that something similar has happened with Will and his painting. Also, you can't just get away with saying Mileven is the main ship without backing it up. Yes, Mike and Elle are central characters, but their relationship has been admittedly lackluster compared to other romances in the show. So much so that Netflix itself put out 2 videos that kind of were shitposts about Mileven in 2022.
Okay, 11, you're being ridiculous.
Sir, the only ridiculous thing here is your inability to say I love you.
Do I want to lose you? No. Do I love you?
Now that was a good video.
Nor can you say that Mileven has been built up for 4 seasons. It's more that they were built up in 1 season, kept apart until the very end of the 2nd season, then systematically torn down in the next 2 seasons. In Season 3, they violated each other's trust. Mike lies to her about his grandma, and Elle spies on him. They never resolve these issues or talk about them, and Elle papers it over with an I love you and a kiss. In Season 4, Mike and Elle are both lying to each other and are being fake happy versions of themselves because they feel they have to lie to make the relationship work. By the end, they never communicate. Mike never explains why he gave sympathy for Elle's bully before giving any to her, and Elle never explains why she lied about being happy in California. And the act that supposedly fixes Mileven, Mike's love confession to Elle, is prompted by another lie from Will to Mike. A lie to cover the truth that the beautiful things Mike heard in the van were not Elle's feelings, but Will's. The reason it's a mantra among anti-BYLERs to say that Mileven has been built up for 4 seasons and that they've been together for 4 seasons is that they cannot defend how Mike and Elle are as a couple in Season 4, and the scotch tape that's needed to keep them together. As I say in BYLER Part 2, if anything's been built up, it's a house of cards. What's been happening is that BYLER has been built up for 4 seasons. Argument 5. There is no time for BYLER in the final season. First, this argument was popularized because of a 2022 interview with the Duffer brothers that has been misinterpreted. I'll play the clip.
In an unusual, for us at least, Season 5 is going to start pedal to the metal. I mean, we're not going to do the ramp up. There's no time. There's no normalcy, obviously, once you reach the end of 4. I mean, it's not like there's going to be time to explore our characters' love life and how is Steve's dating going. And I mean, there's going to be none of that. It's just going to be going 100 miles an hour from the beginning. I mean, it's going to be intense from beginning to end with not so much ramp up.
They're clearly not saying that there won't be romance in the final season. They're saying that there will not be a calm before the storm that you saw in every other season. It's going to jump straight into the main plots, kind of like the last book of Harry Potter. No time to deal with school and all that stuff. Because this show has always been about its relationships, and that's part of why it rises above other sci-fi shows. It makes you care about the characters. In Season 1, Joyce was trying to find her son Will. Hopper was getting over the grief and guilt of losing his daughter. And Mike was dealing with possibly a first crush with Elle. Second, if there's no time for romance in season 5, then Mileven's in trouble because they haven't fixed their relationship at the end of season 4. Finally, and most obviously, this argument that there's no time for BYLER in the final season practices a homophobic double standard. Mike and Elle were introduced in one season, Max and Lucas were too. Plus, the show has made time for romance, whether I like it or not. This show had time in the middle of the season 3 finale for Dustin and Susie to have a duet. Sorry, I love the song, but not the scene. This show had time for the entire Russian plotline. A preposterous double jailbreak scenario in Cold War-era Russia that did little more than advance the Joppa romantic subplot. This show interweaves romantic plots with the A-plot all the time. This show interwove Max and Lucas's romance plot into her emotional struggle to find the strength to fend off Vecna. This show had time for that. And apparently there's time for the Nancy, Jonathan, Steve triangle to resolve in season 5. The only reason why you have no time for BYLER is because it's gay. And there's a reason for all the time spent on the California subplot in season 4, which only makes sense if you accept that the Duffers were setting up Mike and Will's relationship dynamics for season 5. Anti-BYLERs say there's no time for Mike to find out he's gay, come out of the closet, and have a romance with Will in the final season, and they say it so smugly. But given what the writers have set up for BYLER over 4 seasons, now chronicled in my 5.5 hours of BYLER videos, this is not as convoluted as these people think it is. In reality, a resolution without BYLER is more convoluted. It's Mike will gently reject Will and mend things with 11 after he and Elle realize that his love confession was based on a lie. Mike also gets over his need of having someone who needs him, because that's the opposite of Elle's arc, and they just had a miscommunication about this. Elle also learns to call out Mike's bullshit because she no longer feels dependent on having the approval of a boy. And they can finally have their first healthy, honest conversation that enables them both to move forward. And Will gets over his lifelong love for Mike, and despite feeling like he'll never find love, falls for an entirely new, brand new boy the audience hasn't met yet, whom the writers have turned into a new fan favorite in the final season, in time for him to have a romance with him and a satisfying epilogue in season 5. This is much more convoluted, and again, people say there's no time for BYLER because they personally don't have time for it, because they don't want a gay relationship. But one thing that some BYLERs will concede is that for a number of viewers, perhaps even most, it will come out of left field because of heteronormativity, if it's not done well, at least. Now, how can the show make the audience accept, see, and cheer for a gay ship, one that replaces a relationship that has been in front of the viewers for 4 seasons? I totally think that this is something the writers can solve. They've set this up for 4 seasons, and there's the painting lie. Maybe I'll have time to do a video about this, or maybe not. In the meantime, look at the blog post of mine that I've linked in the video description. Argument 6. Mike doesn't deserve anyone. I see this comment a lot, people who dislike Mike, or think that Will deserves someone better. And there are popular videos who say that Mike should straight up die. They point to how Mike has kind of become a shitty character in the last couple of seasons, and I get it. The thing is, everyone loves Mike from seasons 1 and 2. The reason? That was when he was focused on Will. He's been a dislikable character since he's gotten with Elle. He specifically says that he loses sight of Will when he focuses on his relationship with Elle.
And I feel like maybe I was worrying too much about Elle. And I don't know, maybe I feel like I lost you or something.
He treats Will very differently from how he treats others, quite sweetly, at the times when he's not feeling the pressure of being a boyfriend to Elle. And at season 4, there's that middle period when he's at his most gentle with Will, when they're planning to just go help their friends in Hawkins and are not getting Elle. And that is the Mike Will chooses, the one he declares he needs for the rest of his life. Will knows what he wants, and he sees the best version of Mike because he brings it out of him, and that's being the heart. Give Will his boy, damn it. Argument 7. Why can't guys be close friends without being gay? Here are some example comments. First of all, there already is representation of close platonic male friendships in this show.
Seriously.
No! If you die, I die.
Okay.
No wedgies, no wedgies! Never change. Dustin Henderson. Promise me? I wasn't planning on it. Good. Good. Hey, Sinclair's. How those spears coming on? I love you, man.
And those are definitely platonic scenes. They are very different from how Mike and Will interact, and particularly how Mike interacts with Will.
You know, Max and Lucas and Dustin, they're great. They're great. It's just, it's Hawkins. It's not the same without you. And I feel like maybe I was worrying too much about Elle. Friends. Best friends.
Can you imagine Mike having this conversation with Lucas or Dustin? So people who say this argument are not about having representation of close platonic male friendships in television. They're about keeping gay love in the closet. And they actually, with this argument, undermine what they claim to be for. In BYLER Part 1, I said the following. Now, some would say that they're just very close best friends, and that we should normalize platonic male friendships that involve tenderness and devotion, like these two do. To which I would say, let's also normalize LGBT people. And I should have been clearer. Homophobia is the reason why guys avoid being affectionate or emotionally vulnerable or supportive with their guy friends. Why? Because of the fear that they're gay or will be seen as gay, or less manly, which is related. Toxic ideas of what is acceptably masculine distorts the emotional development of boys and men. And homophobia is the mechanism by which those norms are enforced. People who say validate close male friendships to argue against Mike and Will being romantic in the context of a show that already shows platonic, healthy, male close friendships and where Mike and Will clearly have something more, reflect the same homophobia that in real life makes guys feel like they cannot show care or emotion for each other. If you want more genuine male friendships in real life, deal a blow to homophobia. If in Stranger Things, Mike and Will's gay love is okay, it shows that all forms of love between boys are okay. Second, this argument is the most hypocritical of all the arguments on the list because our society constantly tries to impose heterosexual expectations on boys and girls whenever they interact with each other. Whenever I hear this argument or some variation of it, I think of an incident in my family where two cousins, one from my dad's side and the other from my mom's side, were interacting with each other. They were about 5 or 6 years old. They were innocently talking and playing and giving each other math and spelling bee quizzes. And people in my family were giggling, saying that those two were going to become boyfriend and girlfriend. And how many times have we seen young girls being judged and talked openly to their face about their physical beauty and their potential appeal to men and boys when they grow up? As this tweet eloquently and clearly says, straight people will say that LGBT education isn't age appropriate, but will ask toddlers if they have a girlfriend. From childhood in our society, boys and girls have their sexuality assumed for them. Their sexuality and the expectation that they'll have a romantic partner of the opposite sex is talked openly with them in front of their face. They're made to look at themselves sexually before they might even want to. Here in the United States, at least, we have the phenomenon of child beauty pageants, where girls are made to compete societal expectations of beauty and what a girl is supposed to be.
Contestant number 10 has won Best Dressed, Most Beautiful, and Best Personality.
Children are pressured to fit heterosexual expectations all the time in our society and are praised when they do so. So when people yell at BYLER fans, why do you have to make everything gay? I want to yell back at them, why do you have to make everything straight? Why do you insist on imposing heterosexual sexuality on young children before they're ready to think about themselves in those terms? Why do you have no problem with Mike kissing Elle in season 1 moments after she asks him if he would be like her brother? Why do you idealize Mike and Elle's relationship with children while simultaneously trying to shame BYLER fans for supposedly sexualizing children? Why do you shame any thought or possibility of homosexual romance while imposing heterosexual norms on everyone? It reminds me of people who say, "Oh, I don't mind if you're gay, just don't shove it in my face, don't kiss in public, or hold forth that you're gay." When no one bats an eye when people act stereotypically straight. Such people might claim they're not homophobic, but the actual equal treatment of LGBT plus people they don't accept. It's straight privilege in action. The norms and standards that straight people enjoy quietly do not apply to us. This hypocrisy distorts even how some Mileven fans view Mike and Elle. I've seen some say that if Mike were to get together with Will, that this would devastate Elle, and that she would use her powers against Will or Mike or both. Not only does this disregard that people can have amicable breakups and still be close friends, it also shows that the idea of a platonic, loving relationship between a boy and a girl, Mike and Elle in this case, is beyond their comprehension. To some of these people, the only loving relationships between boys and girls that they can imagine are romantic ones. Now, before anyone objects, sure, many people accept the platonic friendship between Robin and Steve. Not all, there are people who ship them together even though Robin is declared a lesbian. But people accept this platonic friendship because the show established that Robin is canonically gay. And we all know that many people, including me, I must confess, were shipping these two to be a romantic couple before we knew that. If someone ships Mike and Elle being together without her confronting his poor treatment of her in season 4, without there being an honest conversation about that, that definitely raises an eyebrow from me. His love confession didn't address it, and okay, theoretically these two can repair things if they communicate, and if Mileven happens, I really hope they do. But for some Mileven shippers, the need to address Mike's behavior doesn't even enter their minds because they're idealizing their relationship. In other words, they are imposing their idea of a relationship on these two in much the same way my family was imposing the idea of a relationship on two young people who weren't ready for it. And for Elle in season 1, a girl who was just 6 days out of a lab who didn't know what a friend was, and for both Mike and Elle who were bonded by trauma when they were 12 years old, to say that these two aren't ready for a relationship is an understatement. So if anyone asks, why can't two boys just be friends? Why do you have to make everything gay? It's purely hypocritical and dishonest. No, we just want this particular relationship between Mike and Will, which is clearly something more, to be gay in a sea of heterosexual relationships in television. They're the ones who rule out a boy and a girl just being friends. They are the ones who insist on imposing romance on a boy and a girl when they're not ready. They are the ones who insist on everything being one way. Argument 8. The abused girl needs a happy ending. For Elle, a girl who grew up abused and manipulated by Dr. Brenner, the argument goes that she, and viewers who see themselves in Elle and identify with her, needs to know that she can find love and have a happy ending. Even out of the most horrible and abusive of childhoods, you can find love and normalcy too. Well, that sounds valid, but I would argue that Elle not falling for the first boy who says he loves her is an important lesson that those very same people need to learn. When you were groomed your entire life to feel that your sense of worth is tied to getting the approval of an abuser, when you get idealized, unrealistic, and unhealthy ideas of romance from television while isolated from society, it is dangerous to put all your hopes in getting all of your validation eggs in the basket of a romantic relationship with a boy. In season 3, Elle, with her friendship with Max, is only starting to learn what her own interests are and what she likes independent from Mike. In season 4, she has lost Hopper, the one stable male supportive figure in her life, and she's away from Max. And so she starts idealizing her relationship with Mike and using it as a substitute for feeling normal and loved, having any sense of self-worth. It's not healthy, and it's not good for her or for Mike. Elle figuring out that before she enters romance, she needs to figure herself out is an important model for young women and others who have survived childhood abuse, who have internalized patterns of always psychologically feeling like they have to get others' approval to have any sense of self-worth, which can lead to unhealthy romantic relationships that perpetuate the cycle. Elle developing her own identity and finding validation in her own judgment of the wonderful person she is, instead of via a frankly bad boyfriend, is the arc that the show has had for Elle. The show has spelled out that Elle is happier and becomes a stronger person when she steps away from Mike. Now, what about Will, who comes from an abusive childhood as well? First, you can't equate the two's feelings for Mike. Elle comes straight out of lab life, and Mike is one of the first people to show care for her. The first was Benny, R.I.P. Benny, sorry I forgot you in the first video. Elle knows little else besides Mike.
Is Mike a good kisser? I don't know. He's my first boyfriend.
And as I go over in part 2, she never really gets to know Mike. And in her Rinkomania date with Mike, prioritized building this fantasy of the relationship over what Mike actually wants. But Will knows Mike better than anybody, and knowing fully who all of Mike is, he knows that he will love him for the rest of his life to the extent that he'll put Mike's welfare completely before his own. Second, Will's abuse from his father and society has had a different effect on Will than on Elle. Elle is trained to seek validation from a male figure and a potential new abuser. Will is trained to not seek love at all. That any thought of love for a boy makes him an ugly, horrible person. For Elle, loving a boy gives her a false sense of normalcy. For Will, loving Mike is wrong and makes him a freak and a mistake. Just hoping that Mike loves him back makes him stupid and, as we BYLERs too often hear, delusional. He has internalized his father and society's hate. He hates himself for being gay and feels he does not deserve love. To the extent that he's too quick to sacrifice himself for others, something that I'm sure will bear out in season 5 at some point. Will's arc is not that he loves his best friend who doesn't love him back, which we don't know. It's that he loves his best friend and hates himself for it, thinking that his love is ugly and wrong. It's the wrong ideology that every gay person is taught growing up, to hate your own capacity for love. Society is wrongly telling Elle to find another man. Society is wrongly telling Will to not love. And to never expect a happy ending. Bury your gays is a trope, where LGBT plus characters statistically are killed off or have shitty endings more than their straight peers because we are viewed as more expendable. There are theorists who say that Will be rejected by Mike and he will then sacrifice himself for Hawkins and his friends, who don't understand that this would be the worst case of bury your gays of all time. It would mean that Stranger Things would be, in sum, 5 seasons of anti-gay emotional torture porn, where Will is made to suffer for 5 seasons, remains selfless and generous despite it all, and ends by sacrificing his life so that all of his straight friends and loved ones can be safe and happy. But BYLER would devastate Elle, some would say. Well, no. She'd actually be relieved, I think. She is also affected by heteronormativity and thinks that Mike is straight because he's dating a girl, her. And we all know that Elle is too quick to conclude if a relationship that she's in has any problems, it stems from herself. She would see that Mike's reluctance to say he loves her is not her, not something about her, but because he's gay or has an incomparable love for Will. It would be part of her process of self-growth. It would be confirmation that she could trust her instincts, that she was right to unofficially end the relationship mid-season 4 because something was missing in their relationship, something that exists between Mike and Will. Elle would not be devastated. The show has made clear she's fine without Mike. Her happiest time is when she leaves Mike in season 3. In season 4, she's using her relationship with him to make herself feel normal and not like a monster, which she resolves by leaving Mike to go to the Nina Project, where she learns who the real monster is and that she doesn't need validation from a man or a boy to have a positive view of herself. Her arc in season 4 was her learning to be her own judge of her own character, of becoming independent, having her own sense of who she is before entering a romantic relationship with all the emotional pitfalls involved and responsibilities involved. And that seems to be where Elle is headed. When she's reviving Max, these are her thoughts.
Not Hopper. Not Mike. You. See? What I tell you? There's more to life than stupid boys.
Some anti-BYLERs go so far as to say that we hate Elle, which is untrue. It's nearly universal among BYLERs that we empathize with Elle and want her to not have a shitty boyfriend. which is what Mike has been to her. Deeds, not words, matter. The idea that we hate Elle stems from not being able to imagine Elle can be happy without Mike, which discredits her entire independence arc and supports a harmful message to survivors of abuse, especially female survivors, that they can and should only find validation in romantic relationships. And the idea that Elle would use her powers against Will or Mike is a disservice to her character. She is not petty or spiteful, and she loves Mike and Will deeply. She'd know that Mike wasn't using her and was going through a difficult process of learning about himself and accepting his sexuality. Aren't you diminishing Elle and her love for Mike by saying she'd be spiteful? Steve still loves Robin after Robin came out as gay. Why can't Elle? If anything, I think that if Elle were to find out that Will gave her credit for the painting to make her and Mike work out, despite how painful it was for him, she would want to return the favor. Elle is generous and loving, and some Mileven fans underestimate her. Argument number 9. BYLER is unrealistic and Will should learn to move on. I've heard this said sometimes by LGBT plus people, and the argument goes, it would be great for Will to declare his love for Mike and not have it returned because that would be realistic and represent what it was like to be gay in the 1980s. To which I'd say, we already had that storyline, shut the fuck up. He has already realized that Mike doesn't love him back and has decided to move on. Having a moving on arc for Will in Stranger Things would have required having closure in season 3 or season 4, where Mike rejects him but makes clear he will always love him as a friend, and season 5 will be devoted to the fallout of that. They learn to become close platonic friends like Steve and Robin, and Will likely finds another love interest. That would be representation. But if BYLER doesn't happen, that just adds another tragedy to Will's already fucked up gay life, creating a very bad kind of representation that gays will never find happiness. Will literally says in the penultimate season 4 episode that Mike is the one person who makes him not feel like a mistake. So for Will's gay empowerment arc, the writers have either unintentionally written themselves into a corner or BYLER is endgame. But why is it only when it comes to gay romance that we start talking about realism in Stranger Things? Well, I've got to say, I grew up gay in the 1980s, and I've got to tell you, it was really hard to walk to school with all the Demogorgons running around back then. And I'm so grateful that Stranger Things has a realistic depiction of what it was like to grow up in the 1980s. This show has alternate dimensions and telekinetic powers. There's a secret Russian base under Hawkins. Joyce and company are somehow able to assemble over 100 of Will's drawings to recreate the tunnel network under Hawkins, which to this day I think is preposterous and makes me facepalm. And you know what else is unrealistic? People meeting the love of their life as their first ever relationship when they're 12 years old. And there were gay people who found love in small towns in the 1980s. And if Mike is gay or bi, then it would be a realistic portrayal of figuring out your own sexuality and dealing with internalized homophobia in a way that has yet, as far as I know, been accurately portrayed in television, and that deserves representation. This shows how deeply homophobia affects LGBT plus people to the extent that we lower our expectations of gay romance not only in real life, but in our fictional stories. Because it's a homophobic double standard, and straight people have unrealistic romantic stories all the time. We're told BYLER has no chance because it's unrealistic. Meanwhile, the straights get their outlandish romantic Russian prison double jailbreak fantasy. The straights get to overcome impossible odds. Best friends to lovers is a trope, and no one tells straight people that they're deluding themselves and to be realistic when that trope comes up. In Stranger Things, they get their cute musical interlude in the middle of a desperate situation. They get their near-death moments, their triumphs, their orchestral musical swells, their kisses as the curtains close. They already dominate in the real world and even in our fantasy stories. We deserve happy endings too. Positive posts. I don't want this entire video to be shoveling through shit. There's a huge amount of great positive comments out there, which didn't need rebuttals, and so were not the main feature of this video. However, they are the prevailing opinion, in comment sections of my videos, and I know there's going to be tremendous positive response to BYLER if it happens. As I said at the start, one of the best BYLER proofs is the sheer difference in the quality of statements made for the two ships. I've seen many profound, deep, intelligent, and compassionate comments from BYLERs about how appreciating the ship has positively affected their lives, and I want to share some of them with you. Here's one comment. I'm not queer, but I'll be so mad if they don't make BYLER canon. It just makes so much sense and would make this show the ultimate anthem for outcasts. It would make each of the core 5 a representation of a marginalized group. I love this show, and I think holding up BYLER would seal the legendary beauty of it. Another comment. I'm a straight 11-year-old girl, and BYLER has genuinely changed my life. I've learned so much about what queer people have gone through and have popped that heteronormative bubble. I'm so glad that I got to discover them, and along with that, I've also learned so much about film and media and debate. This society and generation has so much casual homophobia, and I'm happy that I've grown out of that and become a proud ally. This whole community has taught me not to live up to society's expectations and just be myself. Gay is great, stay amazing. And the blue and yellow hearts, which are the official colors of the BYLER fandom. Another comment. I came here with my doubts about BYLER, but after watching this video till the very end, I felt a sense of relief. Not because it convinced me that BYLER would be endgame, but because it makes me comfortable since I'm still a closeted gay boy in a small and war-devastated country called Myanmar. I'm not even sure if I'll be alive when Stranger Things Season 5 comes out. My one wish is to enjoy Stranger Things Season 5 and come out to my family and friends, hoping they won't be homophobic, but I still really hope BYLER becomes endgame. Okay, I hope I can avoid crying during these comments, but we're going to get to some longer ones. This one says, I'm a lesbian, and that's something I've struggled a lot for years with trying to accept. I'll admit that I'm still not quite there. I recently went so far as to date a boy to try and prove to myself and the people around me that I was at least bisexual. I broke up with him once I realized I was falling in love with a close friend of mine who I've known since I was a little girl. Part of the reason I was able to begin the journey of accepting myself was because I realized my reluctance to accept I wasn't into men was directly causing harm to the boyfriend I did have, much like Mike to Elle in the series, and because my sexuality meant I could see the sun, moon, and stars in this friend of mine. She makes me feel powerful, confident, and better for being different. For the first time in my life, I found beauty in the love I could have for others. I found comfort where I had originally found fear, pride where I'd always found shame. She sits across from me as I type this. Maybe this is my version of Will's monologue, a veiled confession for the things I'm so hesitant to say to her face. My point is, these kinds of stories are very real. It is not delusional to anticipate a Mike-Will romance, nor is it evil to desire a Mike-Will romance. Many people, myself included, have found the deepest parts of themselves in this story. Seeing yourself on screen and realizing that you're not alone, going online to see that there are so many people who see you, that they have names and explanations for everything that seems to be vexing you. You're taught about internalized homophobia and compulsive heteronormativity. Everything you've never been able to understand starts to fit together to show you who you are. But there is a common view that that is enough, that we don't need or deserve more. That once Season 5 comes out, if a Mike-Will romance is not implemented into the story, we will be humiliated for thinking, even for a moment, that we could have the happy ending. Stranger Things is in every living room. The message carried by a BYLER endgame would reach every corner of the globe. The positive impact it would have is immeasurable. If the Duffer brothers were smart, and they are, they'd go through with it. I want to live in a world where I'm not scared to tell the girl I love how much she means to me. A world where I'm not forced to bury who I am throughout my childhood and adolescent years, turning 18 not knowing quite where I fit. A world where myself and those alike don't suffer for the comfort of the heterosexual majority, to whom our stories are so easy to ignore. Neglecting to take the possibility of a Mike-Will romance seriously is a reflection of the reason why a Mike-Will romance is necessary in the first place. If you don't like it, you can turn off your screen. We cannot turn it off or make it stop. Believe me, we've all tried. Thank you for this video. I wish you the best and can't wait to see what other videos you make. Okay, just want to thank you for your comment. Lisbeth loves to love. A few more. I'm a gay man who, like many other gay men, fell in love with a straight best friend when I was a young teen. Anyone who has gone through this particular experience knows that it involves emotions and complications that aren't really in any other sort of relationship. In season 2 of Stranger Things, it became obvious to me that Will was in love with Mike. The signs were everywhere, and due to some fantastic acting and I assume directing, I just got the vibe. I didn't amass evidence, I didn't think back to particular moments, I just knew from the way Will talked about, thought about, and looked at Mike that he was going through the same thing I had. I've really only ever felt this way about fictional characters with Killua, I hope I'm saying it right, Killua and Gon from Hunter x Hunter, where it is incredibly obvious to anyone who has ever fallen for a straight friend that Killua loves Gon. I didn't notice that there was so much evidence for Mike's homosexuality. It never crossed my mind that the childhood BFF straight crush could actually reciprocate, LOL. I didn't notice any of the admittedly obvious signs because I was not looking for them or even aware of their possibility. No straight man I've ever met has been open to the possibility that one party of a pair of guy friends might have feelings for the other. They see moments of particular flavors of intimacy, pain, jealousy, fear, and adoration, and interpret them according to their experiences and the expectations founded therein, just as I do. They conclude that they are just really close friends. But it is not as if their conclusion is as valid as any other. Rather, they are blind to the emotions and relations depicted. They mistake their blindness for the non-existence of what they cannot see, as if the blind man doubted the existence of the sky. Hitherto, I was blind to the possibility that Mike was also gay. Thanks for your video. It definitely showed me what I had missed. Okay, thank you for this comment. Be sure, 7412. This next is a DM to me on Tumblr. Someone writes, I'm messaging to let you know that your content has had a real impact on my life. Although you might not see the connection at first, trust the process. Your 2-hour-plus BYLER video was the push I needed to finally confess to the love of my life after dancing around each other for years. I have been in love with this girl since I met her in fandom forums at 14. Although the world is generally more accepting now than it was in the 1980s, her parents, not so much. Her parents basically forbade her from speaking to me because they found out about my sexuality. We haven't been able to FaceTime for over 4 years unless she hid away in her closet, ha. I wanted to just be us so badly, but we've always had to hide. Like BYLER, I knew it was there. Even as a stupid 14-year-old kid, I knew it was going to get her. I saw BYLER on my first watch of the show with her too. I hoped so badly that it could be true in season 5, but I never really let myself believe it until your video. The evidence was undeniable. I had to accept it then, even with the internalized homophobia and heteronormativity. Like you said, not having season 5 means we can't be certain, but it gave me so much hope. It made me realize that I don't need to automatically assume that gay people are destined to be unhappy in every story. I broke down with you at the story you read of what it was like being gay in the 80s. I saw myself in it. If anything were to happen to me, I'd want to die with her knowing just how much I love her. I almost did at one point. Your video, this part of the 3-hour beauty, made me realize that I couldn't let that be us. We aren't in the 80s anymore. Even though the prospects look bleak, I still needed to give her that decision to choose us. I told her about a week later. It went better than I could have ever imagined. Although we aren't officially engaged, we set a wedding date for right after I'm scheduled to pass the bar exam, the 10-year anniversary of us meeting. She's finally moving out on a scholarship this August, so we'll finally be able to be us without the shadow of her parents. On December 31st, I'll be making the flight to finally see her for the first time. That's when the finale comes out. We're both waiting until then to watch all of season 5 together and hopefully watch the love between Mike and Will finally become realized. I'm sorry that this became so long, but I'm so incredibly thankful for you. I needed you to know just how much of an impact content like yours makes, even though it may be hard to see sometimes. Thank you again for everything you did for me, despite no knowledge of our existence. And I want to thank you for your comment and your message. Yeah, as you can see, I'm still making videos, and it's because of comments like this that keeps me motivated. And here's the last comment. It's not my fault you don't like boobies on Tumblr. Ronald, you made my dad cry. Nah, yo, I didn't expect my dad to cry watching the BYLER lawyer vid. Shit's crazy. We're just vibing watching the vid, right? Halfway through, I glance over at my dad and he has tears in his eyes. At first I was like, okay, he relates to Mike, I already knew that. But nope. Next thing I know, he's crying. Not ugly sobbing or anything, but definitely crying. Now, my dad had already told me he related to Mike, but I didn't realize it was this deep. And then when the video ended, he turned to me, eyes all watery, and said, I've wasted more than 50 years of my life. And I swear my heart shattered into like 87,000 little Lego pieces. That line hit harder than Mike's love monologue. Lore drop for the uninitiated. My dad is gay, slay, but he was in a lavender marriage. That's when you marry a gay woman, if you're a gay man, because, well, points itself. Hello, evidence. He got married at 29, divorced 4 years ago, and only came out then too. So when he says wasted, he means he spent most of his life pretending to be normal. He even lost his own will along the way. The only thing he says he doesn't regret is having me and my sister. And yeah, that's when I cried my eyes out later, because oh my god. But also, plot twist, he's officially a BYLER now. We literally share a hyperfixation. My dad is out here gay and thriving, but also ready to fight Netflix executives if BYLER doesn't end up canon. Anyways, this right here is why BYLER needs to be endgame. Stories matter. Representation matters. My dad saw himself in a teenage boy fighting to be honest about who he loves, and it broke something open in him. If Stranger Things has the chance to give people like him, like Mike, like Will, a happy ending, and they don't, that's not just disappointing, that's cruel. Because for my dad, it's too late to rewrite the first 50 years of his story. But for Mike and Will, for every queer kid watching them, it's not too late. They can have what he didn't, they can win. So yeah, this isn't just about shipping, this is about giving people hope. And if BYLER is an endgame, then honestly, the Duffers have wasted our time. Anyway, I hope this was a nice final infusion of BYLER content before Volume 1 of Season 5 drops November 26th. Again, I might do another video. I don't know if I'll have enough time, but please leave comments below. I'd love to hear what you say, and like and subscribe to my channel. Again, I will be posting my reactions to Season 5 as they come out, and also support my Patreon, where you'll have earlier access to those and also fuller versions of my reactions. I have nothing else to add besides that. Thank you for watching.